George W. Bush. Dylan.
All right. I want to read the Paulson comments. I've got Representative Grayson with us, who's a strong advocate of transparency in our government, lest you think everybody there wants to keep secrets. That is, in fact, not the case. Eliot, Spitzer, Gavin, Contessa, all still here. But here's the comment that came out of Hank Paulson in delivering the money to the banks last fall. He says, if a capital infusion is not appealing, you should be aware that your regulator will require it in any circumstance. Now, bear in mind, he's the regulator. He represents the regulator in that context. Representative Grayson, are you there?
Yes, I am.
What has happened to the process of American government that we are being subjected to a culture of secrecy that we obviously now talk about almost daily?
Well, Hank Paulson never should have had that job in the first place. He had a $700 million conflict of interest. And everything that he did while he was Treasury Secretary, every single thing that he did has one explanation: what's good for Hank Paulson.
If you were, I'll come back for a Hank Paulson conversation, quite honestly, not because I don't want to have it, but because I'm concerned that the system of the American democracy has broken down to the point that whether it's Hank Paulson, Dick Cheney, taxpayer bailouts of AIG, whatever it is, that the process by which we are making these, the decision to torture, the decision whether it is, I don't care even about what the decisions are, but the mechanism by which we are making decisions in this country with American resources, behind closed doors, in private meetings, and then we find out after the fact about whether it's waterboarding or with a bank or whatever it is. And I'm trying to figure out what the American voter, what the American journalist, and what we should be expecting of our Congress to improve the congressional system so that this stops happening across the board.
You are absolutely right. One of the best examples of that is the $1 trillion secret bailout issued by the Federal Reserve since last September. That's $3,000 every man, woman, and child in America. And they won't tell me or any other member of Congress who got the money.
I'm aware. Again, so you're sitting here looking at the same set of problems I'm sitting at. Eliot Spitzer's looking at it. Gavin Paulson is looking at it. And honestly, everybody else in America is aware. Even if you don't understand the finance, if you don't understand some of the dynamics, you do understand that decisions are being made with your money behind your back in a way that you may not have approved of, that are to the benefit of small constituencies. What is your sense? I guess I'll bring you in on this, Eliot, and then I'll go out to Gavin. But what can be done in either the political theater or to resolve some of this?
First, one observation, not directly on point. Sure. It's amazing that the very agencies that were imposing their will on the banks are now saying they need more power. Now, the Fed and Treasury are saying, we will prevent this crisis next time if you give us more power. They had all the power in the world. They just didn't use it at the right moment. But I think the answer is for members of Congress, like Rep. Grayson, to call the hearings and call, not in an angry, not in sort of inquisitorial way.
We don't need a witch hunt, really.
But to say to Ben Bernanke, to say to Hank Paulson, to say to Tim Geithner, why did you impose these bailouts? Why did you give money to AIG and to Goldman? Ask the questions. We still haven't had the questions asked. They have to answer the questions if they're asked.
Representative Grayson,
they should be asked.
When are we going to get a hearing like that?
Well, we've had some hearings like that without getting the answers yet. But we took a clip of those hearings, put them up on YouTube, and 1.7 million people have now downloaded that clip and seen it. And that shows that people have a hunger for the truth.
You bet.
Look, I wrote a piece for Slate in which I laid out a bunch of questions that should be asked of Tim Geithner, of Hank Paulson. There was a good piece on the Washington Post op-ed page on Sunday saying what should Hank Paulson be asked. There are many questions out there. Maybe the so-called Pecora II Commission that has just been created by Congress yesterday will begin to ask those questions. Because I disagree with Rep. Paulson about one thing. The policies that Hank Paulson put in place have been continued by this administration. So clearly there is a sense within Treasury and the Fed that there's an imperative to do this. What they haven't done is explain why. I happen to think they're wrong, but they haven't been asked, why are you doing this?
But what's most frustrating, I think, to me and others, both me as a journalist and me as a taxpayer, is the fact that we have yet to see the Congress aggressively step forward and say, listen, we approved your emergency bailout when you brought us into a room last fall and scared us silly.
Right.
Why are we not getting answers now about those decisions in the past, the economic benefits that are going to the Goldman Sachs and the banking system now while jobs continue to be lost in this country? And why are we not seeing our Congress aggressively go into a Cora hearing, a Ron Paul hearing, a Grayson hearing? I don't care who runs it. I just don't understand why we're not seeing a meaningful investigation, or whether we are about to. Representative Grayson, what is your sense on this?
Well, we're not getting the answers that we need, and therefore we have to legislate. That's why I've lined up 100 Democrats to join in Ron Paul's bill to audit the Federal Reserve, something that hasn't been done independently for 97 years. And when they're handing out $1 trillion of our money, and we could reach a point where we'll need a bailout of the Federal Reserve, we deserve answers. That's why we need to legislate. That's why we need to expose this and put some sunshine in the system.
What is the threshold for you, Eliot, and you, Representative Grayson, and Gavin, I want to get you in here, for keeping a secret? In other words, you look at Dick Cheney and defending his secrecy. He says, we focus on getting their secrets instead of sharing ours with them, and on our watch, they never hit this country again. So their argument is the ends justify the means. That's the Cheney argument, is ends justify the means, and the Paulson argument is we don't believe it is tenable to opt out because doing so would leave you vulnerable and exposed, and then goes on to say you should be aware that your regulator, which is Paulson, will require it in any circumstance. And then I got a stack of letters from this Freedom of Information. It looks like the back of a napkin in an Italian restaurant, and then people wrote in their bank, and they wrote in $10 billion. I tried to show this to you guys earlier, but I got 10 of these different forms.
Right. Well, they're separate issues. One, in the security context, I think with the CIA, the question is disclosure to Congress, so there was some element of oversight outside the decision makers themselves, and there I think we have to have a very serious conversation. Right. In the context of the economy, I think it's a question of the public's money is being spent. Yes, there was a crisis. The public needs to hear why they made those decisions, and hear it now and hear it immediately. We did that when I was in government. Obviously, there are privacy issues relating to specific people. Put those aside for a moment. That's not what was going on here. The public deserves to know why these huge sums of money were being given to private entities.
And still, $14 trillion, just short of $14 trillion taxpayer money at risk. You see the Goldman earnings. You see the J.P. Morgan earnings. It's not that we don't want those banks to make money. It's that we want to understand how they're making money and whether it's coming with the risk of their losing money on us while they take the profits. It's just not an acceptable structure if that's the case. Representative Grayson, thank you for the time. Gavin, I'm going to get you in on the Emmy conversation after this, and I'm going to let you go. We'll do a swap out here. We are back with the first ever, and we're a 2-week-old show, so almost everything's a first ever, but the first ever morning meeting awards for the best political theater of the year. Contested with the presentation, Rod Blagojevich, a strong contender for best comedy, Sarah Palin.